Well, this is unexpected, Saram muttered, her four eyes blinking in sequence as she stared at the impossible sight before them. Each blink revealed a different spectrum of analysis, from thermal to electromagnetic. And every single reading contradicted the last 3 months of careful surveillance. The planet below should have been nothing but ash and radiation. According to every scan, every probe, every piece of data they had collected over the past 3 cycles, Kepler 442b was deader than Crick's sense of humor. The hegemony war had ended here 2 centuries ago with a series of orbital bombardments that should have sterilized the surface for at least another millennium. The atmospheric readings had been consistent. Toxic levels of radiation, zero biological activity, soil composition, unsuitable for any known form of life. And yet there it was. A massive forest, green and lush, sprawling across what used to be the northern continent like nature had decided to play the galaxy's most expensive practical joke. The canopy stretched for thousands of kilometers, an unbroken sea of emerald that seemed to pulse with its own internal rhythm. Zara, are you seeing this? Vex's voice crackled through the calm, her tone carrying that particular mix of excitement and terror that made Zara's skin crawl. The Zalarian pilot had been with the survey team for 6 years, and Zara had never heard her voice shake like this. The bio readings are off the charts. I mean, completely insane. Trees that size shouldn't exist on a planet with this atmospheric composition. The gravitational stress alone should have collapsed them centuries ago. I can see it, Bex. Zara's tentacles twitched as she adjusted the scanner settings for the 5th time, her experienced fingers dancing across controls she had used for 4 decades. Each adjustment revealed new impossibilities. The question is, how is it possible? The radiation levels down there should still be lethal to carbon-based life. The magnetic field is barely functional. There's no ozone layer to speak of. Commander Neth floated over from the navigation console, his massive thorian frame casting a shadow across the observation deck. At nearly 3 meters tall and built like a living mountain, Neth had commanded deep space exploration vessels for longer than most species had been spacefaring. His scarred hide told stories of encounters with everything from plasma storms to hostile first contact. If something made Neth nervous, it was worth taking seriously. Theories? His voice rumbled through the bridge's recycled atmosphere like distant thunder. None that make sense, Zara admitted, which really bothered her. She prided herself on making sense of things. It was literally her job as the expedition's chief xenobiologist. She had catalogued over 300 new species, written the definitive papers on extremophile adaptation, and had been personally consulted by the Galactic Council on biological impossibilities. This should not be stumping her. The radiation levels should have sterilized everything biological centuries ago. The atmosphere is barely breathable, even with significant technological assistance. The soil composition is wrong for plant life, too acidic, too depleted of essential minerals, and yet there's a forest down there that looks like it belongs in some primitive paradise simulation. Neth finished, his primary eyes focusing on the displays while his secondary pair continued monitoring the ship's sims. How big would you estimate? Bex's voice came through again, slightly breathless. Conservative estimate? 2,000 square kilometers. Maybe more. And Commander, these aren't just any trees. Look at the size readings. Look at the structural analysis. Zara felt her stomach sink as the numbers appeared on her screen. The data was so outrageous she ran the scan 3 more times to be certain. 300 meters tall, some of them pushing 400. That's impossible. No organic structure can support that kind of height without specialized internal frameworks. The tensile strength requirements alone would exceed anything found in natural cellulose or lignin. Unless they are not entirely organic, Neth said quietly, his tone carrying the weight of someone who had seen too many impossible things turn out to be horrifyingly real. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of the ship's systems. The Meridian's engines provided a constant background thrum that had become as familiar as their own heartbeats over the past 6 months. It was the kind of silence that preceded either brilliant revelations or terrible mistakes, and in Zara's experience, the terrible mistakes far outnumbered the revelations. "Sir," Crick spoke up from the communications station, his young voice breaking slightly. The Catherian had joined the crew fresh from the academy, all enthusiasm and textbook knowledge. His crystalline skin flickered with nervous bioluminescence as he studied his readings. "I'm picking up something else. Energy signatures from within the forest. Very faint but definitely artificial." "Define artificial," Neth commanded, his attention sharpening. Artificial energy signatures on a dead world meant technology, and unidentified technology in their line of work usually meant trouble. Unknown technology. "The patterns don't match anything in our databases, and trust me, I have run them against every known civilization, including the precursor archives." Arcrix paused, his brow ridges furrowing as he fine-tuned his instruments. "It's almost like the trees themselves are generating the energy." "But that's not the weird part." "There's a weirder part?" Bex asked from the pilot's station, her voice climbing an octave. "The energy patterns are synchronized, all of them, across the entire forest. Like they are connected somehow, operating as a single massive system." Zara felt a chill run down her spine that had nothing to do with the ship's environmental controls. In her 40 years of xenobiology, she had learned to trust her instincts. They had kept her alive through encounters with carnivorous gas clouds, sentient crystals that sang ships to their doom, and plants that could rewrite DNA with their pollen. And right now, every instinct was screaming that they needed to leave. Immediately. "Commander, I strongly recommend we maintain our current distance and conduct passive scans only," she said carefully, choosing her words with the precision of someone who had learned that being right about danger was often less important than being diplomatic about it. "This situation has too many unknowns. The biological impossibilities, the energy signatures, the sheer scale of whatever's happening down there. We need more data before we consider any kind of direct investigation." "Noted," Neth replied, but his tone suggested he had already made up his mind. She had heard that tone before, usually right before things went sideways. "However, the Council's mission parameters are clear. We investigate all anomalies." Vex, "Prep the shuttle." "Sir, with respect," Zara tried again, her tentacles coiling with anxiety. "We don't know what we are dealing with. For all we know, this could be some kind of trap. The timing is suspicious. A dead planet monitored for decades, suddenly sprouting a continent-sized forest just as we arrive for our scheduled survey." Neth's laugh was devoid of humor, a sound like grinding stone. "A trap? Set by whom?" "The planet's been monitored for decades. No signs of intelligent life. No ships coming or going. No communications of any kind. Just a dead rock floating through space until 3 days ago when this forest mysteriously appeared on our long-range sensors." "That's exactly my point," Zara insisted, her voice rising slightly before she caught herself. "Forests don't just appear, especially not on dead planets, especially not forests of this size and complexity. The ecological requirements alone, the time needed for growth, the infrastructure for such massive organisms. This represents centuries of development that should have been impossible given the environmental conditions. Which is why we are going to find out how this one did." Neth moved toward the shuttle bay with the purposeful stride of someone who had made countless life-or-death decisions and was comfortable with the weight of command. "Full investigation team. Zara, Bex, Crix, and myself. Environmental suits. Full sensor packages and enough firepower to handle anything we might encounter." "Anything we might encounter," Crix's voice squeaked, his bioluminescence flickering rapidly in patterns that Zara recognized as extreme anxiety. "Sir, what exactly are we expecting to encounter?" The briefing materials mentioned this was supposed to be a routine biological survey of a confirmed dead world. "Hopefully nothing," Neth said, pausing at the bridge exit. "But in my experience, when something seems too good to be true, it usually is. And when something seems impossible, it's usually just using technology we don't understand yet." 20 minutes later, Zara found herself strapped into the shuttle's xenobiology station, watching the mysterious forest grow larger as they descended through the planet's thin atmosphere. The Meridian's shuttle was a marvel of engineering, designed for exactly this kind of investigation. Reinforced hull plating, redundant life support systems, enough scientific equipment to establish a temporary research station, and defensive capabilities that could handle most threats short of a full military engagement. The trees were even more impressive up close, their scale becoming truly apparent as they descended. Massive trunks that seemed to stretch endlessly upward, their bark showing unusual patterns that almost looked like circuitry. The canopy was so thick it created its own weather system, with clouds forming in the upper reaches and what appeared to be internal rainfall creating a complex moisture cycle. Landing zone identified, Bex announced from the pilot's seat, her hands steady on the controls despite the obvious tension in her voice. Small clearing about 2 kilometers from the forest edge. Atmospheric readings are marginal but breathable with I'm also picking up some interesting geological features. Define marginal, Zara asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. Her own instruments were painting a picture that made no sense. Oxygen levels are surprisingly good, 21%, exactly what most carbon-based species would consider optimal. Nitrogen balance is acceptable. Trace amounts of unknown compounds, but nothing immediately toxic according to our database. Bex hesitated, her flight engineer training warring with what her instruments were telling her. There is one odd thing though. Just one? Crix muttered from his position at the communications array. The air temperature is exactly 22 degrees Celsius throughout the entire forest canopy. Not approximately, exactly. To the 10th of a degree. I have taken readings at 17 different altitudes and 43 different locations. Every single measurement is identical. Zara felt her tentacles curl involuntarily. Temperature regulation on this scale was beyond the capabilities of any known natural system. That's not possible. Natural ecosystems don't maintain perfect temperature control across such vast areas. There are too many variables: solar radiation variance, altitude differences, seasonal changes, atmospheric pressure fluctuations. Something has to be actively regulating the environment. Unless they are not natural, Neth observed grimly, checking his weapon's charge status for the 3rd time. The shuttle touched down with barely a whisper. Bex's piloting skills evident in the smooth landing that barely disturbed the unusual grass covering the clearing. Through the viewports, Zara could see the edge of the forest perhaps 50 meters away. The trees looked even stranger from ground level. Their bark had a subtle shimmer to it, and the leaves, while green, seemed to reflect lit in patterns that hurt her eyes to follow. There was also something else, something that made her scientific mind rebel against what she was seeing. Commander, she said slowly, studying her readings, the trees are exhibiting signs of responsiveness to our presence. Elaborate. The electromagnetic signatures are changing. They have increased by approximately 12% since we landed, and the patterns are becoming more complex. It's almost as if they are curious about us. Plants don't get curious, Crick said, but his voice lacked conviction. These might not be plants as we understand them, Zara replied, her instruments revealing layer after layer of impossible biology. The cellular structure is unlike anything in our databases. There are clear signs of technological integration at the molecular level. All right, people, Neth said, standing and activating his environmental suit systems, standard exploration protocol. Stay together, maintain constant communication, and if anything seems wrong, we abort immediately. Zara, what are your scanners telling you about the immediate area? Zara consulted her handheld device, frowning at the readings that seemed to change every time she looked at them. Biosignatures are everywhere. Massive ones. But they are not quite right. The cellular structure readings are consistent with plant life, but there are metallic elements integrated throughout. Carbon-silicon hybrid matrices, organized in patterns that suggest deliberate engineering, and the neural activity. Neural activity, Crix interrupted, bioluminescence flashing in alarm. Plants don't have neural activity. They don't have nervous systems. These do. Extensive networks of electrochemical signals running through root systems, up the trunks, branching through every leaf. The complexity is staggering. It's almost like... She paused, double-checking the readings because they were so far outside normal parameters. Like they are thinking, not individual thought processes, but something more complex. Network cognition on a scale I have never seen. Thinking trees, Beck said flatly, securing her pilot's station and checking her own suit systems. Great. That's not ominous at all. They approached the forest edge cautiously, weapons ready, scanners active. The trees loomed above them, their canopy so thick it blocked most of the pale sunlight filtering through the planet's damaged atmosphere. As they drew closer, Zara noticed something else that made her skin crawl with unease. Commander, the trees are definitely responding to our presence. Responding how? The neural activity is increasing, significantly. And there's a pattern to it, almost like communication. But more than that, the physical structure is changing. Look at the bark patterns. Neth stopped abruptly, raising his weapon slightly. Communication between the trees. Among them, yes. But also, Zara's voice trailed off as her scanner picked up something new, something that made her question everything she thought she knew about biology. There's something else. Deeper in the forest. Multiple biosignatures. Small ones. Moving with purpose and coordination. Animal? Vex asked. Hopefully. Though her tone suggested she didn't really believe it. I don't think so. The movement patterns are too coordinated, too purposeful, too intelligent. Zara's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. I think there's something sentient in there, something that's been watching us since we arrived. They stood at the forest's edge for a long moment, the weight of decision hanging heavy in the air. The trees swayed gently despite the absence of any wind, their movement creating soft sounds that were almost musical. And if Zara didn't know better, she would have sworn they were watching. The bark patterns seemed to shift when she wasn't looking directly at them, and she could feel the weight of observation pressing against her mind. New plan, Neth said finally, his military training asserting itself. We go in, but we stay on the perimeter. No more than 50 meters from the edge. First sign of trouble, we retreat to the shuttle. Everyone maintains visual contact with at least one other team member at all times. Crix, keep that communication array active. I want constant updates on any energy signature changes. Understood, sir, Crix replied. Though his bioluminescence was now cycling through patterns that Zara recognized as barely controlled terror, they stepped into the forest and immediately everything changed. The temperature dropped exactly 5 degrees as if they had crossed some kind of environmental threshold. The humidity increased noticeably, creating a microclimate that felt more like a carefully controlled laboratory than a natural ecosystem. And the sounds, which had been the normal background noise of wind and distant wildlife, simply stopped. Complete silence fell over them like a blanket, broken only by the soft whisper of their own breathing and the quiet hum of their equipment. It was the kind of silence that felt alive, as if the forest itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what these strange visitors would do. This is wrong, Crix whispered, his voice barely audible through the comm system. This is very, very wrong. I'm reading massive energy buildups throughout the local area. Whatever's happening here, it's responding to us. Keep moving, Neth ordered, but Zara could hear the tension in his voice. He had served in 3 different military campaigns before joining the exploration service, and his survival instincts were finely tuned. If he was nervous, they all should be. The trees around them were massive beyond comprehension. Some of the trunks were so wide that their entire team could have hidden behind them with room to spare. The bark patterns were definitely artificial now that she could see them up close, Zara realized. Too regular, too purposeful to be natural growth. They looked like circuit boards made of living wood with nodes and pathways that pulsed with soft bioluminescence. Commander, Bex called softly. Look at this. They gathered around what Bex had found, a section of exposed root system where the soil had been disturbed. The roots were clearly organic, displaying all the cellular characteristics of normal plant life, but threaded throughout were metallic fibers that pulsed with soft light. The integration was so seamless it was impossible to tell where the biological ended and the technological began. Cybernetic integration, Zara breathed, kneeling down to get a closer look with her scanners. Someone has modified these trees, enhanced them, but the level of sophistication is beyond anything I have ever seen. This isn't just technology added to a biological system. This is true fusion, hybrid existence, where the organic and artificial components are completely interdependent. Who? Crix asked, his voice barely steady. And why? What kind of civilization has the ability to modify plant life on this scale? Before anyone could answer, the pulsing light in the roots began to spread. Other trees picked up the signal, passing it along like some vast organic network coming online. Within seconds, every tree in their immediate vicinity was glowing softly, and the neural activity on Zora's scanner went completely off the charts. They know we are here, she said, her voice barely steady as she watched patterns of communication race through the forest at the speed of thought. Of course they know we are here, a voice said from directly behind them, calm and conversational and utterly impossible. We have been watching you since you entered orbit. The four aliens spun around, weapons raised, to find themselves facing three figures in environmental suit humans, by their build and movement, two males and one female, standing calmly as if they had been part of the forest all along. Their suits were unlike anything in the galactic databases, seamlessly integrated with organic components that pulsed with the same bioluminescence as the trees. "How did you?" Neth began, then stopped. His scanner had shown no biosignatures in this direction moments before. Now it was registering three massive energy sources that somehow managed to be both organic and artificial simultaneously. The human in the center, a tall male with graying hair visible through his helmet visor, smiled with an expression that was both welcoming and terrifying. "You have been scanning for biological life, haven't you? We are not exactly biological anymore. Not entirely artificial either. Something new." "What do you mean?" Zara demanded, though part of her was beginning to understand, and that understanding filled her with a cold dread that had nothing to do with the forest-controlled temperature. "My name is Cole," the human continued conversationally, as if this were the most natural thing in the world. "This is Maya and Rex. We are what you might call the forest's immune system. And you, unfortunately, are what we might call a potential threat." "We are explorers," Neth said carefully, his weapon still raised but not quite aimed at the impossible humans standing before them. "We mean no harm. This is a scientific survey mission. Nothing more." "I'm sure you don't," Maya spoke up, her voice carrying an unsettling mix of warmth and steel. She was smaller than her companions, but there was something about her presence that suggested she was far more dangerous than her size indicated. "But you are also representatives of a galactic civilization that has a rather poor track record when it comes to respecting unique ecosystems. Your own databases contain records of 17 civilizations that were partner-located in the name of galactic harmony." Crix raised his scanner toward the humans, then gasped. The readings were impossible. "Commander, I'm not reading them as fully organic. There are cybernetic implants throughout their bodies, extensive ones. But they are not like any technology I have ever seen. It's almost like they are grown rather than manufactured." "Of course there are," Rex said with a grin that was somehow both friendly and threatening. His suit showed wear patterns that suggested decades of use, but the organic components seemed to be continuously repairing and upgrading themselves. "How else would we interface with our friends here?" He gestured toward the trees, which seemed to lean slightly inward at his words, their bioluminescent patterns brightening in response. "Interface?" Zara asked, though she was beginning to piece together a picture that terrified her. "You noticed the neural networks," Cole observed with obvious approval. "Very good. Yes, these trees think, they learn, they remember, and they are connected to us as much as we are connected to them. We are partners in the truest sense of the word." "That's impossible," Neth protested, his military training warring with the evidence before his eyes. "Cybernetic integration with plant life on this scale would require technology far beyond anything in our databases. The computing power alone, the biocompatibility requirements, the sheer scope of the project. It would take centuries and resources beyond the capabilities of most galactic civilizations." "Your databases," Maya said with amusement that didn't reach her eyes, "don't include human innovation under extreme circumstances. They don't account for what happens when an entire species faces extinction and refuses to accept it." The trees around them rustled, though there was still no wind. The sound was almost musical, like a vast organic orchestra tuning its instruments. But underneath the music Zara could hear something else. Whispers. Conversations. The sound of thousands of minds thinking together. "You see," Cole continued, his tone becoming more serious, "when the war came to our planet, when the hegemony's radiation bombs and plasma bombardments turned our world into the dead rock you expected to find, we had two choices: die with dignity, or do whatever it took to survive. We chose survival. So you chose to become one with the forest," Beck said, beginning to understand but hoping she was wrong. "Not exactly," Rex corrected, his smile becoming more pronounced. "We chose to become the forest." As if responding to his words, the trees around them began to glow more brightly. And in that light, Zara could see movement in the canopy above, not the random movement of wind-blown branches, but purposeful, coordinated shapes that might have been human once, integrated so completely with the forest that it was impossible to tell where flesh ended and wood began. Every tree in this forest, Meyer explained with obvious pride, contains the preserved consciousness of at least one human. Some of the larger specimens contain dozens. We have been growing here, learning here, preparing here for over 200 years. Preparing for what? Neth asked, though his voice suggested he didn't really want to know the answer. For the day when someone would come looking for us, Cole replied. For the day when we would have to decide whether the galaxy was ready to know what humanity could become when pushed to its limits. The forest around them pulsed with light, and suddenly Zara understood why her scanners had detected such massive neural activity. It wasn't individual trees thinking. It was thousands of human minds linked together in a network that spanned continents. Each pulse of light represented thoughts flowing between consciousness, decisions being made by democratic process among the dead. You are all connected, she whispered. Every human consciousness in the forest. We are the forest, Maya confirmed, her eyes reflecting the bioluminescent patterns of the trees. And the forest is us. We think together, decide together, act together. We have become something new. Something that transcends the limitations of individual consciousness. Something that your people, Rex added with that unsettling smile, probably aren't prepared to deal with. The trees leaned closer, and Zara realized that their little exploration team was completely surrounded, not by trees but by a collective intelligence that included thousands of enhanced human minds. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just a forest, it was a civilization. A species-wide consciousness housed in a living ecosystem. So, Cole said pleasantly, the question now is, what do we do with you? The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Zara's 4 hearts were beating so rapidly she was certain the humans could hear them through their enhanced sense. Around them the trees swayed with an almost hypnotic rhythm, and the soft glow emanating from their bark patterns had intensified to the point where it was no longer quite so soft. Well, Cole said finally, tilting his head in a way that reminded Zara uncomfortably of a predator studying its prey. This is interesting. Your biometric readings suggest you are terrified, yet you haven't run. That shows either remarkable courage or remarkable stupidity. I prefer to think of it as professional curiosity, Neth replied, though his grip on his weapon had tightened considerably. We are scientists, not soldiers. Maya laughed, a sound that somehow echoed through the forest canopy as if the trees themselves were amplifying it. Scientist, how wonderfully appropriate. You know, we were scientists once too, before we became something more. Define more, Zara managed, her voice steadier than she felt. Show them, Rex suggested, and suddenly the forest around them erupted into motion. Branches twisted and reformed themselves into complex geometric patterns that defied several laws of physics. Roots erupted from the ground in spiraling helixes that glowed with internal fire, and the trees themselves began to shift, their trunks flowing like liquid while maintaining their structural integrity. It was like watching reality rewrite itself according to new rules. Programmable matter, Crix whispered in awe, his bioluminescence flickering in patterns that Zara recognized as academic excitement warring with existential terror. But that's theoretical technology. No one has managed to make it work on this scale. The energy requirements alone should be impossible. No one in your civilization, Cole corrected gently. Humans, however, have always been rather good at making the impossible work when our survival depends on it. The display lasted only moments, but when it ended, the forest had completely rearranged itself. What had been a natural-looking woodland was now clearly artificial, with pathways of living wood leading deeper into the network and structures that could only be described as bioarchitectural marvels. Buildings that breathed, bridges that adjusted their own structural integrity in real time, and towers that reached toward the sky like organic skyscrapers. How? Bex breathed, her pilot's mind trying to process the engineering implications. 200 years of practice, Maya replied. 200 years of human minds working together, pooling knowledge, sharing insights across a network that spans this entire continent. When you have thousands of scientists thinking as one, solving problems collectively, sharing every breakthrough instantly, the rate of innovation becomes rather spectacular. But why reveal yourselves to us? Neth asked, lowering his weapon slightly. You could have stayed hidden. We would have left eventually. Oh, but you wouldn't have, Rex said, with that unsettling smile. You see, We have been monitoring your communications since you entered this system. Your ship, your crew, your mission parameters. This isn't just a scientific survey. You are scouts for a colonization fleet. Zara felt her blood turn cold. That information was classified at the highest levels. How did you access your encrypted communications? Please, Cole waved dismissively, and Zara noticed that his hand showed clear signs of technological integration, with metallic traces running along his fingers like living circuitry. When your computer systems are based on silicon circuits and ours are based on hybrid bioneural networks spanning an entire ecosystem, hacking becomes less of a challenge and more of a recreational activity. The fleet isn't scheduled to arrive for another 6 months, Crix said before he could stop himself. Crix, Neth snapped. It's all right, Maya said pleasantly. We already knew 17 ships. Approximately 50,000 colonists, full terraforming equipment designed to remake planetary ecosystems for optimal habitability. Your people have comprehensive plans for this planet, plans that don't include us, Rex added, his smile becoming sharper. The trees around them creaked ominously, and Zara realized that the sound wasn't random. It was communication. The entire forest was discussing their fate, thousands of human minds weighing options and possibilities within human speed and efficiency. So what happens now? She asked, forcing her voice to remain steady. You kill us to protect your secret. Kill you? Cole looked genuinely surprised, even hurt. Why would we kill you? That would be terribly wasteful. Besides, we are not monsters. We are still human, even if we have transcended some of the traditional limitations of the species. Besides, Maya continued, we need witnesses. Witnesses to what? Instead of answering immediately, Rex gestured toward a path that had formed while they were talking, living wood reshaping itself to create a clear route deeper into the forest. Walk with us. There's something you need to see, something that will help you understand what we are offering your people. They had little choice but to follow. The forest guided them along pathways of living wood, past trees that bent to create archways and clearings that opened at their approach. Everything was responsive, alive, the very ground beneath their feet adjusted to provide optimal traction and comfort. You have to understand, Cole said as they walked, his voice taking on the tone of someone delivering a carefully prepared speech. When the war came, we weren't just fighting for territory or resource. We were fighting for the right to exist as an independent species. The hegemony decided that human technological advancement was a threat to galactic stability. The hegemony fell 300 years ago, Neth pointed out, his military historian training asserting itself. Yes, it did, consumed by its own contradictions and the rebellion of a dozen species who refused to accept second-class status. Maya's voice carried a bitter edge that spoke of personal experience, but the attitude that created it didn't die with the government. The belief that younger species should defer to older ones, that innovation should be controlled and regulated, that diversity is dangerous to galactic order. Your council perpetuates the same policies, just with more bureaucracy and prettier words. They emerged into a vast clearing where a structure that defied description rose from the forest floor. It was part building, part tree, part something else entirely. Organic curves blended seamlessly with geometric precision, and the whole thing pulsed with that same soft light they had seen throughout the forest. But this was different, more complex, more alive. What is? Bex asked, her engineering background struggling to make sense of what she was seeing. Our memory core, Rex replied with obvious pride. Every human consciousness that has joined the network is preserved here. Every thought, every memory, every innovation. We are immortal now, in a way your people never managed to achieve. More than that, Cole added, gesturing toward the structure with something approaching reverence. We are connected in ways that individual consciousness never allowed. When one of us learns something, we all learn it. When one of us solves a problem, the solution is instantly available to everyone. Death is no longer an ending. It's just a transition to a different form of existence. Inside the structure, visible through translucent walls that seemed to be made of some kind of living crystal, Zora could see what looked like thousands of data storage units. But these weren't mechanical devices. They were organic, pulsing with gentle bioluminescence. Each one containing what she realized with a start were preserved human brains, enhanced and networked together in ways that transcended anything she had imagined possible. You preserved your dying, she said quietly, the full scope of what she was seeing finally becoming clear. Not just preserved, Maya corrected. Enhanced, improved, perfected. When the radiation finally made biological survival impossible, we found another way. We integrated our consciousness with the modified plant life we had been developing for decades. But why trees? Crix asked, his scientific curiosity overcoming his fear. Why not more traditional computer systems? Because trees are patient, Rex replied with a philosopher's smile. They think in terms of seasons and decades rather than moments and minutes. They taught us perspective. They showed us how to think beyond the immediate, to plan for centuries rather than years. And they are incredibly efficient, Cole added, his technical background showing through. A forest ecosystem can support massive computational loads with minimal energy requirements. We have turned this entire continent into a thinking machine powered by nothing more than sunlight and rainfall, sustainable, renewable, and capable of growth that could theoretically continue forever. As they stood there, Zara's scanner began picking up new readings. The energy signatures were changing, growing stronger and more complex, as if the entire forest was awakening to some new level of activity. Something's happening, she reported, her scientific training overriding her personal terror. Yes, Maya said with satisfaction. We are preparing. For what? To send a message to your colonization fleet, and through them, to your council. The forest around them began to change again. But this time the transformation was on a scale that defied comprehension. Trees throughout the clearing began to reshape themselves, growing upward and outward, forming massive structures that looked suspiciously like weapons, Neth breathed, his military experience recognizing the configurations. Defense systems, Cole corrected gently but firmly. We have no interest in conquest or expansion, but we will defend ourselves and our way of life. You can't fight an entire fleet, Vex protested. Even with your technology, you are talking about 17 ships with full military escort. Can't we? Rex asked, his smile returning with renewed intensity. You have seen what we can do on the small scale. Now imagine it expanded across an entire planet. Imagine bio-ships that can repair themselves, grow stronger, adapt in real time to any threat. Imagine weapons that learn from each encounter, that evolve and improve with every battle. Imagine, Maya added with a smile that was anything but pleasant, what happens when you give human ingenuity unlimited time to prepare, unlimited resources to work with, and the shared knowledge of thousands of enhanced minds working toward a common goal. The structures rising around them were clearly not just defensive. They were also communication arrays, signal amplifiers, and unless Zara was very much mistaken, some form of faster-than-light transmission system that operated on principles she couldn't even begin to understand. You are going to contact the council directly, she realized. We are going to make them an offer, Cole confirmed, his tone becoming more businesslike. A partnership. Humans and the galactic community working together as equals rather than supplicants. And if they refuse, then they will learn that humans don't stay down when they are knocked down, Rex said, his cheerful demeanor becoming something harder and more dangerous. We adapt, we evolve, we become something stronger. It's what we have always done. You are threatening war against the entire galaxy, Neth accused, his weapon rising slightly. Are we? Maya asked innocently, though her eyes held no innocence at all. Or are we offering to share the greatest breakthrough in consciousness evolution that any species has ever achieved? She gestured toward the memory core, its bioluminescent patterns pulsing in complex rhythms that seemed to hypnotize anyone who looked too closely. Immortality, Commander, not just for individuals but for entire civilizations. We have solved death. We have created a way for knowledge and experience to be preserved and shared across generations without loss. We could teach this to your people, to all the council species. At what cost? Zara asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Recognition, Cole replied simply. Respect. A seat at the table instead of orders to defer to our supposed betters. The right to exist as equals rather than junior partners in someone else's vision of galactic order. And if that doesn't work, Rex's smile turned predatory, and for a moment Zara could see something inhuman behind his modified eyes. Then we demonstrate what humans can accomplish when we really put our minds to it. When we stop playing by other people's rules and start making our own. The transmission array finished forming. a massive construction of living wood and biometal that reached toward the sky like an organic cathedral. Energy began to build around it, visible to the naked eye as streams of light that flowed through the forest's neural network. "You are really going to do this?" Beck said, her voice filled with something between admiration and horror. "Contact the council directly." "We are," Maya confirmed. "And you are going to help us." "Help you how?" "By delivering our message personally," Cole explained with the patience of someone who had clearly thought this through. "You see, we need witnesses, credible ones. Scientists who can verify what they have seen here, who can explain to the council exactly what they are dealing with." "And if we refuse?" Neth asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Cole gestured around them at the forest, that was very clearly listening to every word, processing every thought, making decisions based on thousands of years of combined human experience. "Then you will stay here as our guests until the colonization fleet arrives. And they will get a rather unpleasant surprise when they try to implement their terraforming protocols. You are holding us hostage. We are offering you a choice," Maya corrected with false sweetness. "Help us make first contact properly, or watch us do it the hard way when your fleet arrives with their planet-reshaping equipment." The transmission array hummed with power, and suddenly holographic displays appeared in the air around them. Star charts showing fleet positions, council communication frequencies, tactical assessments of military capabilities. The humans had been very busy gathering intelligence. "Impressive reconnaissance," Zara admitted grudgingly, her scientific mind admiring the scope of the intelligence operation. "Thank you," Rex said with genuine pleasure. "We have had time to be thorough. 2 centuries gives you a lot of opportunities to listen, learn, and plan." "So what's it going to be?" Cole asked, his tone becoming more serious. "Will you deliver our message to the council? Explain what you have found here. Help them understand that humanity is ready to take its place as an equal partner in galactic civilization. And if they don't agree to your terms," Neth pressed, his military instincts recognizing the threat implicit in the question, "then they will discover what happens when you try to suppress a species that has learned to think collectively," Maya replied, her voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. "When you threaten people who have had 2 centuries to prepare, who have turned an entire planet into a strategic resource, who have technologies your databases don't even have theoretical frameworks for, you are serious about fighting the entire galaxy if necessary," Beck said, her pilot's mind already calculating odds and finding them terrifying. "We are serious about surviving," Cole corrected, "and about ensuring that no other species ever has to choose between submission and extinction. The galaxy is big enough for diversity. It's time the established powers learned that." The transmission array reached full power, and suddenly the air around them shimmered with communication signals reaching out across the galaxy at speeds that should have been impossible. "There," Rex announced with satisfaction that bordered on smugness. "Message sent. Your council will receive our formal introduction in approximately 6 hours. What did you tell them?" Zara asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. "The truth," Maya replied simply. "That humanity has evolved beyond their expectations. That we are offering partnership and mutual advancement. That we have technologies and insights that could benefit every species in the galaxy, and that we are prepared to defend our right to exist by any means necessary." "You have just declared independence from the Galactic Order," Neth said flatly. "We have declared our readiness to join it as equals," Cole corrected. "There's a significant difference. We are not rejecting galactic civilization. We are demanding to be recognized as full participants in it." "Is there a difference? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you have just started a war." "Only if the council is foolish enough to choose war over progress," Rex said, his expression becoming more serious. "We are hoping they are smarter than that. We really are." The forest around them pulsed with light as thousands of human minds considered the implications of what they had just done. It was, Zara realized, probably the most complex collective decision-making process in galactic history, and the decision they had reached was either the beginning of a new age of cooperation or the start of the most devastating conflict the galaxy had ever seen. "So," Maya said pleasantly, her tone becoming conversational again, "shall we return you to your ship so you can prepare your own report? I'm sure the council will want a detailed account from neutral observers." "Neutral," Dex laughed bitterly. "You just used us as unwilling accomplices in your declaration of independence. We offered you a chance to witness history in the making, Cole replied with unshakable confidence. What you do with that opportunity is up to you. As they walked back through the forest, now clearly revealed as an enormous living machine, Zara found herself considering the implications of what they had discovered. Humanity hadn't just survived extinction. They had transcended it. They had become something new, something unprecedented, something that might just change the galaxy forever. One more question, she said as they reached the forest edge, the normal trees giving way to the modified clearing where their shuttle waited. How many other dead planets aren't actually dead? The three humans exchanged glances that somehow managed to be both secretive and smug, a look that suggested they were sharing information across their neural network in real time. Now that, Rex said with his most unsettling smile yet, would be telling. They reached their shuttle without further incident. But as they prepared for departure, Cole approached Zara one last time, his expression becoming serious. A word of advice, he said quietly, his voice pitched so only she could hear. When you make your report, remember that you have just witnessed the birth of something entirely new. Not just a technological achievement, but an evolutionary leap. Don't let the Council's fear of change blind them to the opportunities we are offering. And if they are blinded, then they will learn that humans have become very, very good at opening eyes. He paused, looking up at the forest canopy where shapes moved with purpose and intelligence. We don't want war. We have seen enough of it. But we won't be pushed around anymore. We won't be treated as children who need guidance from their elders. As their shuttle lifted off and the forest receded below them, Zora watched the trees arrange themselves into a pattern that looked suspiciously like a farewell wave, or possibly a warning. The distinction seemed less important than the fact that an entire ecosystem had just demonstrated coordinated intelligence on a scale that redefined what was possible in the universe. So, Crix said nervously, his bioluminescence cycling through patterns that betrayed his emotional state, what exactly are we going to tell the Council? The truth, Neth replied grimly, his military bearing reasserting itself as they left the impossible planet behind. That humanity is back, that they have become something we never anticipated, and that they are not asking for permission anymore. Looking down at the impossible forest one last time, Zora wondered if the galaxy was ready for what humans had become. Somehow, she doubted. The established order had grown comfortable with predictability, with species that stayed in their assigned roles and didn't challenge the status quo. But ready or not, change was coming, and it had roots that ran deeper than anyone could imagine. The question now was whether that change would come through cooperation or conquest. Whether the galaxy would embrace this new form of human consciousness or try to destroy it out of fear. Either way, Zora thought as the planet disappeared behind them, the universe had just become a much more interesting and dangerous place.